everyone, and welcome to Vital Wisdom with me, Dr. Eli Camp. So, the last episode, I focused on ADHD and talked a little bit about anxiety and depression. Mostly, I went over the stats for those and how alarming it is to me to see the dramatic rise over the last 8 to 10 to 12 years, depending on which one we're talking about. And I just wanted to add a few follow-up comments to that discussion before I jump into today's talk, which is about raising vital children. So I've treated a lot of ADHD over the last 20 years. And as I mentioned last time, cleaning up the diet and the environment and things like that, the right homeopathic, some supplements, bringing in physical activity, getting them off screens, all of those things is a very successful strategy for getting ADHD not only under control, but really eliminating it and helping them focus and stay on task and control their behavior and things like that. Anxiety is not much different, right? It's usually a combination of lifestyle stuff and understanding where the anxiety comes from and a homeopathic remedy. And anxiety is also pretty easily handled. Depression is a little bit tougher. And I usually bring on a psychologist or psychiatrist, a holistic, of course, to help manage the case, especially in the older children. But we do similar things, right? We address the nutrition, we address getting toxins out, we address screen time, we address a number of different things, and the extra healthcare practitioner is on board for making sure we have all of our bases covered. We have to be really careful that it's a true diagnosis of ADHD or anxiety, and there's a whole set of diagnostic criteria. We shouldn't be just looking on Facebook for the symptoms of those and then assuming that our child has that, or allowing a teacher to diagnose it. It needs to be done by a healthcare professional who's familiar with these conditions. And I had mentioned one of the books, one of the last books that I mentioned, how there's a doctor who proposes that their ADHD isn't even really a true diagnosis, that it's an accumulation of different things and an expression of other kinds of illnesses, which is a really interesting idea. So today I'm talking about raising vital children and practices that we can bring in at as young an age as possible for long-term child wellness. And the first big question is, how does a child's physical and mental environment affect their health? And before I answer that for a child, I'd like to sort of fast forward into the lives of many adults who have come in to see me. And definitely because of my practice of homeopathy as part of being a physician, we do a lot of talking about people's childhood and trauma that they experienced and how they grew up and how they learned to view themselves, how they talk about themselves, right? Self-talk, how they view their worth and their efforts and their contributions to life. And it is extremely common when we unpack all of this to find that in their childhood, there was not a good, healthy physical or mental, emotional environment that they grew up in many different ways. And that translated into how they viewed themselves as they grew and continued to view themselves as they became adults. And this is not, in fact, this is mostly not about mental, emotional health. This translates into physical health, because how we think of ourselves, how we treat ourselves, what we tell ourselves about ourselves can absolutely have physical manifestations as well. And I've treated a number of people with a number of different diagnoses that are physical diagnoses, But when we unpack it all, it is linked to the way they think, what they think about themselves, and the environments that they grew up in. So my point in that little rambling there was that it is imperative that we as caregivers and parents learn how to structure our child's physical and mental environment from as early an age as we can. So if you are a parent or caregiver of teenagers, yes, you've lost a lot of time, but it's not something you can't fix. And if you are the parent or caregiver of young children, you have an advantage because you can start this very early. The first thing I'd like to address is the mental emotional environment, and then we'll talk about the physical environment. So the mental emotional environment that we construct for our child begins often with how the caregivers are interacting with one another and how we deal with and resolve conflict, how we live our lives, whether we are creating schedules or structuring our day in some way, if we plan our week, if we are moving in calm confidence and show that we have faith in ourselves and in our ability to handle the things that come our way, or if we are running around willy-nilly like chickens with our heads cut off. I know it's kind of a graphic example, but our children watch us and they learn from how we live our lives. One of the first things is in how we teach our children to go about tasks and do things around the house. And I'll give you a concrete example here. Many families decide at some point, 9 or 10 or 11 years old, that the kids are ready to clean up the kitchen. And they get asked, they're told, you're old enough now, you can clean up the kitchen, so you're going to take care of cleaning up the kitchen after dinner. And the kids go in, and if you've ever had a young child clean up the kitchen, you know that you probably don't want to eat on the plates that they've cleaned. The counters are usually a mess. The cabinets aren't wiped off. The floor is dirty. Sometimes the food is put away properly, sometimes not. And the caregiver, the parent will come in and they have a lot to say about how it should have been done. And if this happens repeatedly, not only with dishes, but with anything else that they're asked to do, this starts to set up this cycle of, I don't know how to do it. I'm not doing it well enough. Why should I even try to do it? Because it's never done right. And this extends into not just things with their simple household tasks, but in anything that they tackle with school, in groups, in interacting with other people. And as they grow, that self-talk, it becomes ingrained in them. In comparison to a child who, from a very young age, 3 or 4, who has been helping in the kitchen and has helped for a couple of years in the cleaning of dishes. And as you clean the dishes, you talk about why it's so important to clean them a certain way. In putting away food, and you talk about how important it is that food gets wrapped up and it gets put away quickly so bacteria don't grow. In the cleaning of countertops and cabinets and floors so we don't attract bugs into our house. And they get to work with us for a long period of time until, and then you build up to, you know, when you're 9 or 10, you can take this over and do it, and you can do it. And this is true about any task: dishes, clothes, cleaning the house, taking care of pets, taking care of the yard, picking up their rooms, personal hygiene. It doesn't matter. In all areas that we know at one point in their life, they're going to need to really take over this for themselves in order to be self-sufficient and thriving and productive. First, we teach, and they're our helper, and then we become their helper, and then they can take over the job. And this takes a couple of years to work through this, to where you can leave them with the task, and you can come in and notice what a great job they did, right? This also extends to, like I said, being able to converse with other family members and work through conflict. So if you are parents of 2 or more children and you observe they're constantly fighting, then you have not taught them how to resolve conflict. You haven't taught them how to get along. Even if you get along with your significant other or your co-caregiver, we have to explain what we're doing. We have to demonstrate through how we live and coexist with the other adults in the home, how to observe boundaries and accept responsibility for our actions, how to apologize when needed, how to work through conflict, how to use communication to communicate our feelings and our needs. And we demonstrate this to them. And then as they grow, we employ those same tactics and those same behaviors with the child. It's okay if they get angry, but then we teach them what to do with being angry. How do you recognize what's making you angry, and how do you communicate your anger, and how do we resolve the situation so that everyone understands what their responsibility is and how to communicate their feelings about it. Honesty and truth is a very important part of a healthy mental environment. Understanding, how money flows in a family, how much comes in and how much goes out, and we demonstrate by our own behavior in buying or not buying things. And you make it a plan and you learn how to save for it. Not being yelled at, right, instead of yelling at your kids, you have a conversation with them. Instead of criticizing, you teach by example and you lead by example so that they learn what to do and how to do it. And if you struggle with this yourself, then it's okay for you to figure out how your upbringing may have affected your ability to function properly in that mental, emotional sphere. The physical environment is just as important. Is your home clean and tidy? Is it organized? Does it run by a schedule? Is it clean of toxins? And not only toxins as in cleaning supplies and perfumes and fragrances and toxic things in the home, but is it orderly? Is it organized? Does it run on a schedule or on a goal setting sort of approach? Like, these are the things that we need to accomplish this week, and this is when we're going to do them and how we're going to do them. Are they safe physically? Do you use hitting as a punishment or as a teaching tool? Because that doesn't work, right? That teaches violence. Timeouts are a really great tool to use for children whose behavior needs to be modified, along with conversation and explanation. Are we saying things to them like, you're stupid, or how smart are you, or why can't you figure this out, or look what you made me do, or like throwing accusations like that out with or without physically doing something physical to the children, starts to set up a pattern of trauma within the kiddos. And I know that my grandparents were all about whipping off the belt and giving the kid a good smack, right? With a willow branch or with a belt. It's just how my older generations in my family felt discipline needed to be dished out. And I can tell you there's many kids in the next generations that were pretty messed up. And they had to really work through a lot of things before they could start to step into their higher functioning selves. We don't have to physically damage our children in any way to get them to learn these lessons of life. They learn by example. So you, as the caregiver, may have to learn some of these behaviors and some of these things yourself. But until you start using these and living these and acting in a certain way, your children certainly can't learn it from you. They can learn it from other things. This habit that people have gotten into in the last 20 years of using a screen device to babysit our children is very detrimental, and it does not teach them the problem solving that they need in the real world. And I know that it makes for a good babysitter, but you're losing so much teaching time with them. And they're learning things you probably don't want them to learn. And they're missing out on playing with one another and interacting and imaginative play outside and creative play. Physically moving their bodies is really important for a kid. Drawing and painting and using their hands to express what's inside, what's in their imagination is very important. Learning to keep their physical environment in a certain state creates order, and it makes it easy to teach them the cascade of events that happen if you do certain things and if you don't do certain things. So all of these things have a direct impact on health. It's not just in the mental emotional sphere, right? It is how robust their immune system is and how their feelings, or they can deal with their feelings and their emotions. And remember, I talk frequently about the field of psychoneuroimmunology, and this is what we think and how we feel and its direct impact on our immune system and on other biological processes in our body. So those are primarily the key elements of the impact of the physical and mental environment and how it affects our children's health. By us leading the way with encouragement and goal setting and teaching by example and keeping things organized, we help structure the way our children think and the way they live their life and how they think about themselves, their self-talk. When we start thinking about a wellness-focused lifestyle and what the key elements of a wellness-focused lifestyle for kids might be, we can do the same thing we just did. We can zoom forward in time to how children grow into adults and the habits that they have. Many times when I'm sitting down with someone and we are talking about their state of health as an adult, and we go backwards into their childhood, the focus for most of those folks, well, it depends on their age. For my 70, 80-year-old patients, the lifestyle that they were raised in is much different than those who are in their 50s and 60s and those in their 30s and 40s. So for my older patients, their lifestyle that they had as a child did not involve screens and cell phones and watching a lot of TV. They were outside playing. Mom did a lot of cooking. Many of them, they had a family garden. If they lived a little more rurally, they had chickens, so they had their own eggs. Um, and they actually understand the concept of a healthy lifestyle, even if they haven't lived it themselves. But many of them were exposed to it as children. But they weren't necessarily taught how to live that way. They can just remember things that their grandparents used to do. How there would be a pantry with food that was canned that came out of the garden, and how they spent their time. There was lots of playing with other children. There was lots of outside time, lots of imaginative play. And there were some foods that were purchased in the grocery store, but not nearly as many as we start to move backwards to my 56-year-olds, 34-year-olds, etc. If we want our children to live a wellness focused lifestyle once they're older, we have to expose this to them when they're younger. And what does that mean? Well, that means they see us and help us cook our own food. What's even better is they help us grow food and harvest food, and they learn how to preserve it. They learn about the basics of health, meaning proteins and fats and carbohydrates, and what are good quality, healthy examples of those foods. They learn other things about food, like sugar is not good for us. Fried food should be eaten sparingly. They understand how to look at a label and read a label and understand what is in the food that they're eating. A wellness focused lifestyle includes a really good balance of a little bit of screen time, especially today when we have a lot of children being homeschooled and they have to spend time on the computer. That makes their play time on a screen should be very limited. If they're not learning on a computer, then there could potentially be a little more screen time for entertainment. And then they're doing book learning. They have to understand, and we have to instill the importance of physical movement in a wellness focused lifestyle, right? So they have to play and bend and stretch and pull and lift and run around outside in the sunshine and things like that. The other thing about a wellness focused lifestyle includes meditation, quiet time for them to do the things they want to do, draw and paint and sculpt, and there's kind of artistic activities that work all different parts of our brain. This is very important. Travel is important, so they can see something other than home and their own town. They can see how people in other parts of our country live. Even people who, like if you're a city dweller, taking them to a farm to understand where food comes from and how other people live. If you live on a farm, making sure they understand what city life is all about. There are some very important things that can help children develop a social conscience, and that is doing volunteer work. So this is a wellness focused lifestyle, is giving and helping others who are less fortunate or less capable. Setting goals, being taught how to reach those goals, learning about staying hydrated with water, learning about the dangers of sugars and food additives and food preservatives. the importance of moving their body, the physical exercise, making sure screen time is as limited as possible, developing good social networks so children can interact within a peer group. One of the things that a lot of folks come to me with their children and wanting to teach them things and a lifestyle that's conducive to health building and not disease building is this idea of understanding the entire chain in the commercial realm, meaning if you're going to buy milk in the store, does your child know where milk comes from? Do they understand how important it is that the cows we get milk from are free-ranging cows and not being fed corn and not being given antibiotics because they're grazing on their natural food, which is grass? And I just use milk, right? But this is true with all food, sweets, snacks, all of these things. Making sure that your children are not overcommitted on their time is very important. There has to be time to do all the things that need to be done and the things that they want to do in a day, with time to just be and think and roll around in the grass and pick up a paper and a pen and just be able to sketch and scribble. They have to learn how to entertain themselves, right? And not rely on the caregivers and the parents to keep them occupied. So those are key elements. How do we do this as parents and caregivers, right? How do we instill these healthy habits for our children to carry forward in adulthood? We cannot just tell them. We have to lead by example. So the first place to start is taking a good long look at how you live your life. Do you eat good quality food? And do you stay hydrated? And do you take the time to be still? And do you spend all your time on your screen or your phone? Or do you do other things? Do you meal plan? Do you have a garden? Do you take little trips? Like, how much are they learning from you for their healthy habits? Because kids don't learn by being told what to do. They learn by watching the main caregivers in their life and how they live their life. And it's not necessarily just enough to watch. We have to communicate with our kids and tell them why we're doing what we're doing. The whole time, we're also giving our kiddos a choice, right? It's important to not feel like the world controls you, but that you have a choice. And in order to make informed choice, we have to understand the consequences of any choice that we might make. And so I think that there's many grown-ups in our society today that are trying to change their own lives because they were not raised in a wellness-focused lifestyle or learned healthy habits as children. And so they couldn't bring that forward. And they're just trying to recreate and fix that now as adults. And many of them have children who have already been born and were already raised in a particular way. They may be preteens or in their teenage years. And if they were raised a certain way and now you've decided to change your life, you can meet with a lot of resistance. But if you explain why you're doing what you're doing and the challenges that you might be facing as an adult in your health or your life, and why you have to make these changes, and that if they make these changes early for themselves, then they won't suffer the way you're suffering, that might go a long way to convince, the folks that you care for and you're teaching, for them to be able to understand the implications of why you might be wanting to change life around for everybody. One of the big things I think in helping children develop resilience is in understanding the different approaches to health. So if this makes sense to kids, right? It makes sense to them that their body's already built to heal itself. It's just that maybe no one's told them that. They haven't demonstrated to them how that works, that if you give your body what it needs and you get rid of something that's poisoning it, your body feels better and it's able to heal itself. And the more healthy your body is, the more resilient you are to illnesses or diseases. If we're running around scared and freaked out and, eating bad foods and then getting sick and trying to find medicine instead of connecting the dots of, I first have to build a healthy body and keep my body healthy and not poison my body. And then my body will function like it's supposed to. It will thrive. If we don't instill that, then kids don't get it. Kids, like I said, they get what they see. They get what they're being taught. Holistic health education can be really fun. It can be really exciting for kiddos. There's lots of things that you can do. And you can start with plants because plants are one of the simplest forms of life, and they respond very quickly to lack of water or lack of light or lack of nutrients. And you can see what happens when a plant doesn't have what it needs. And you can draw that correlation to humans. If we don't get what we need, the vitamins, the nutrients, the water, the rest, the physical movement, the sleep, the love, the support, if we don't get what we need, right? This is a holistic health education. The well-rounded education, the one that brings in all of the bits and pieces that are needed to create health instead of create disease. And if you can instill that in them in a young age and they grow with it being the normal, they will be very resilient. They will be hardy. They will thrive. Their immune systems will be strong, have good problem solving skills. They'll be able to set goals and reach their goals. So it really is a way of understanding how the body works, because the body works that way, the planet works that way, and society works that way. Get out of society what's poisoning it. Bring more love, compassion, understanding, collaborative efforts into society, and we start to see society right itself, right? It depends what is being taught as the most important things in life. And one of those very important things is community and social connection, not necessarily on the screen. Although I just had a conversation yesterday with a mom who said, that's where my kids' friends are hanging out, is online. Okay, maybe some of their friends are hanging out online, but let's help them make other connections with kids that aren't hanging out online. More and more parents today, this is 2025 now, are understanding the detriment that living a life online is causing for children, and they are making a move away from the online environment into let's connect in real life and have play dates and get together and hang out. Here at Long Shadows Ranch, we do a teen night every month. Yes, it's once a month, but man, our kids look forward to that all month long. And other families are doing the same thing. So eventually, they're going to have something to do every week. They're too busy to do something every night, and they shouldn't be doing something every night. They have busy lives, things that they have to do. They have chores and schoolwork and, projects. Sophie's beading and crocheting, and Brian's making bows according to traditional Cherokee life ways. And, they need time for those projects as well. So I know that a screen device can be a great babysitter. I get it. I do. But it does not serve your child well, and it will not help them develop the ability to form strong social connections with other folks their age, with people older, with people younger. And it really deprives them of understanding what a community is all about. Now, if you go to church and you have a good, strong church community, They probably get that sense once a week in church. But church is not the only community, right? Not everybody that lives around us is part of a church. And there's an extended community out there we can teach them to be part of. And I'll take it all the way back to the beginning when I say they're going to learn by what we do and how we act and what we demonstrate for them. What do we model for our kids? What are we doing as caregivers? Are we eating well? Are we spending too much time on our own screens? Are we interacting out there in the community? Are we getting our own physical exercise in? Are we speaking politely? Are we maintaining boundaries? Are we kind and courteous? Do we teach them how to talk through conflict, work through conflict? So this is how I would say that we can raise very vital children, and we can set them up for uh, uh, for being able to thrive as adults in the health of their body and their mind, their ability to be strong community members and productive citizens of a well-functioning society. And we need this now more than ever, because I don't know about you all, but when I look around, I see society is broken and struggling, and people are scared, and they don't know who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. And I really think it's much simpler than how these big corporations make it seem. Our bodies know what to do. They can be very healthy. Um, we don't have to buy products that are full of poisons. We have a lot of options for providing for ourselves with good, clean food and water, and creating a calm and balanced mental and emotional space. We don't have to be afraid. We just have to be knowledgeable about what to do and have the long picture in mind of how we want to mold and shape our kiddos so that they become adults that are centered, balanced, eating well, sleeping well, living in a healthy way. Thanks so much for joining me today on Vital Wisdom, and I'll see you next week.